Antony Loewenstein is the author of The Palestine Laboratory. It's a book on Israel's arms and surveillance industry. He's joining us from Sydney. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. I want to talk to you about the influence of drones on the way that this conflict is being carried out. This is possibly one of the first times you will, I'm quite sure, be able to tell me how accurate this is, where drones have been used to such a significant degree in order to be able to influence a conflict, at least within this region.
Look, drones obviously have been used for decades by Israel and the US and others, but definitely since October 7, Israel has been deploying particularly killer drones, essentially quadcopters, which have been the cause of huge amounts of deaths in Gaza. There are a lot of Palestinians in Gaza, including some who I've spoken to, who have seen these essentially killer drones. Now, killer drones have existed before October 7, of course, but Israel has deployed them in such a way that one of the so-called innovations, and this, of course, is something, as I talk about in my book and my work, that Israel will then sell and promote to other countries who want to copy it in other conflicts, is the ability to use killer drones to take out what they view as the enemy, which essentially is any Palestinian in Gaza. And the concern with that is, of course, that at the moment, there's no real global regulation on drone use at all. I mean, in some ways, there's a very loose understanding about how drones shouldn't be able to kill innocent civilians, which is a no-brainer. But in reality, what Israel's been doing in Gaza and increasingly in Lebanon and elsewhere is deploying those kinds of weapons as killers, and not just as surveillance, but also as murdering huge amounts of people.
If I understand it correctly, Israel has been repeatedly in the past in breach of Security Council Resolution 1701. Now, as many people probably know by now, this was the UN Security Council resolution that was designed in order to protect the border on certainly in southern Lebanon. But Israel, for its part, had repeatedly flown into Lebanese airspace and made incursions that way. Do you think that what we're seeing now, in terms of the drones that are being used, is this how this is going to be now? That the nature of incursions is going to change very slightly, but we are going to see more and more drones flying over parts of Lebanon?
I mean, yes, is the short answer. And anyone who spent time in Lebanon will say that seeing Israeli drones or Israeli planes in the air across Beirut, for example, for years, completely breaching international law has been common, ubiquitous even. Look, what Israel is doing and is trying to accelerate, especially since October 7, is to develop new forms of warfare and killing, whether it's AI in Gaza, artificial intelligence, or the use of swarm drones. But of course, other players can use those tools and technologies too. It's not just Israel. Hamas has used some of that. Hezbollah certainly has. The US obviously has. In fact, it's often used by Ukraine and Russians in the Ukraine war since February 2022. But what Israel is trying to do here, I think, is not just to show that they are dominant militarily, but to use that as a key part of their economy moving forward, because Israel's economy is struggling. There's no doubt about that in the last year. But the defense sector and the high-tech sector is doing relatively well. And that's partly because so many nations look to Israel, sadly, both in the global north and the global south, hence the term the Palestine Laboratory, that they look to it as an inspiration, as a model. And I know already a number of Israeli companies and the Israeli government go to global arms fairs since October 7, talking about how they're using these kinds of weapons of war and in trying to inspire other nations to buy them from Israel. This is how this system works, the global arms industry. And it concerns me greatly that there is really no impediment to Israel doing this. The US essentially is on board. The US, in fact, is not just providing money, but huge amounts of weapons. Just in the last few days, they're sending some form of missile defense shield with American troops to Israel to protect them from the proposed likely attack on Iran, and Iran will probably strike back. This is the nature of modern warfare, and the delusion, though, finally, is that this protects Israel. But in the end, actually, it does the opposite. It makes Israel far more vulnerable to other groups, because ultimately what Israel will face across the region are growing numbers of guerrilla forces, insurgencies, maybe not major nation states, but insurgencies that Israel, as many Western states, have always struggled to deal with.
Antony Loewenstein, we appreciate you giving us the benefit of your knowledge in this. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much.